booties for black girl nerds.
Yay! Well, Allen, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Black Girl Nerds. I am a big fan of you and your brother's work as filmmakers. So it is an honor and a privilege to be able to talk to you today about this docuseries, which, by the way, was absolutely compelling and amazing to watch.
Oh,
I, I thought I knew everything that there was to know about Tupac Shakur. I mean, this man, his life has been heavily documented throughout the years, and yet you expose more information about this man that I was very pleased to know, and you exposed a genius that just made me appreciate him even more. So thank you for bringing this out into the world.
thank you. Yeah, he's all you have to do is go back to someone's childhood to discover more. I think that was the magic of Dear Mama. Is like what happened back then, what happened with Afeni, what happened with that trial, what was he born into, and there was a lot of answers because I had a lot of misunderstandings about him that I just wanted to understand. So a lot of those seeds for what he became were right in that childhood.
That was one of the things, and this isn't even in my line of questioning, but this was something that was really fascinating to me in the docuseries that was captured was those videos, those archival videos of him in high school speaking. And there were other students that were also having these conversations, and they sounded like high school students. But he didn't sound like a high school student. He sounded like this sage wisdom, kind of wizard that really sounded like he was from another planet. I mean, he honestly had so much knowledge to be so young. It was phenomenal to hear the words coming out of his mouth, living such a short life and experience on this earth. I mean, were you just blown away when you were watching that archival footage and seeing
Yeah.
that as you
Yeah,
were
it's funny
going?
because when you're editing it, you get to see all the other kids' interviews in full. And clearly, to your point, he was light years ahead of them. And I'm in the editing room with a bunch of academics and intellectuals in their 40s and 50s, and no one sounded like Tupac while cutting the film. So forget a high school, we were like, and everyone was in awe of the combination of like wonder in his eyes and innocence, but yet that knowledge of someone that was maybe too young to have it would
Yeah.
blow us away in the cutting room. And so you're looking at something that you picked up on that, we kind of used to frame the early parts with, and you see it throughout a little bit, and you see the essence of who he really truly is before it was affected or afflicted by the music business and the film industry.
There are so many hip hop artists who have come and gone, and some who we've tragically lost, like Tupac. But Tupac, he stands the test of time. And nearly 30 years after his death, we're still talking about him. Why do you think he's made such a lasting impression on so many people?
I think Tupac is like a third rail live wire. I think that he is, as I've stated, as a young man, let alone a young black man, he was available to whatever emotion he was in. If it was joy, he was completely. If it was love, rage, violence, whatever it was, he was there for it and can access it immediately. And I think that makes him very attractive, and I think that makes him dangerous. And we all love that, but he didn't sugarcoat his emotions. And again, as a young black male, I think that was not that we haven't seen emotions, but especially the sensitive side. He was just poetry in motion that way, very pure, and his whatever he was experiencing, that's what made him different. Very passionate, obviously, and very powerful.
He certainly was very powerful. Tupac is arguably one of the greatest rappers of all time. Do you think that his success was a result of the times that he was living in that made him successful, or would he be successful in today's world?
I think he'd be successful in any generation because he's a once in a generation talent, like Muhammad Ali. Um, there are certain people that come that just have that transcendent um, spirit and power, and they tick all the boxes too. What makes Tupac possibly the greatest rapper of all time is that he ticks all the boxes. It ain't just the lyrics, it ain't just the delivery. It's his movie star good looks that aren't not traditional Western good looks either. They're very unique African American beautiful looks. The way he moves, his acting ability, his compassion, his anger. We could keep going on and on and on. When you hear him on a track and you hear that rage, sometimes you go, man, hip hop had been around for 30 years before Tupac came about, and I don't think we ever heard that level of emotion and passion on wax like that. So when you think of, I love Biggie. That's one of my personal favorites. I love Scarface, the Ghetto Boys, as actually my personal favorite rapper of all time. But none of those guys, and you can keep going on and rock him, none of them check all the boxes that Tupac does.
Facts on top of
Yeah.
facts. And you mentioned his good looks. That was something I also noted too while watching your docu-series. You captured really well, just those really close shots of him, and just seeing that archival footage. I don't know. I just was like, I didn't realize how good looking and just how cute he was back then. And it was just something that was just very remarkable to me, just to see him in those moments where he did have a very extraordinary appearance.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. And
when you,
again, let's keep in mind they weren't traditional Western features.
yeah,
They were very unique to the African American DNA, shall I say, and very angelic, and as he would say, Egyptian pharaoh like.
Egyptian pharaoh, like,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. I mean that's unique, because usually when pop culture like icons that are black get over, they have to like whiten themselves, whiten their features, and to have a guy that was that, shall we say, gorgeous and uniquely be African American is saying that's another secret sauce he had that was no one that I just had never seen that before at that level.
Right, right.
You know,
When you're directing a documentary, what's the process? In other genre films, directors work with actors and they coordinate scenes together. But what was your role as a director as it relates to this particular docu-series?
as far as my approach,
Yeah, as
or
your approach, as you're working with because there was a lot of people that you worked with on this docu-series. I was very impressed with the number of rappers and people that were close to Tupac, and then his mother, of course, Afeni Shakur, was in this. So tell me about that process of like corralling all of these folks together and then working
yeah,
through the archival
I
footage.
mean that was probably the most daunting part is just trying to figure out who you're going to interview, why you're going to interview them, if they've been in a bunch of shit before or not, and like what's a new take, a new angle. And they had a manuscript. The estate had a manuscript written by one of our producers, Stacy Robinson, while Afeni was alive. So I got to see things in the manuscript in his childhood. I got to see characters I wasn't aware of, so I used that as a roadmap. But even when you look at the beginning and how we open in Atlanta in '93 Halloween when he shoots the two off-duty police officers, we had never heard from his cousin Dante before. We had heard from Billy before, his cousin Billy, but we had never heard that after that event, they went to the hotel room, everyone's in hysterics, thinking they're going to jail, and Tupac wants to play this demo, and it happens to be Dear Mama. So it was trying to find those new narratives, and that was daunting. But focusing it on their dynamic, mother and son dynamic, and on Afeni's narrative made it a simpler equation because that was all fresh. that angle with her, with his mother, was all a fresh angle in it. And what focused me was, let's not have any story in here that has nothing to do with these two and their bond. And even if it's an independent thing that happens with her or with him, how does it affect the other one? And that made the equation a lot simpler in the process, you know.
Yeah, I've never seen this commentary and the discussion from his mother's perspective before. So was this footage that, how were you able to obtain these interviews from her?
Well, she had, you know, the challenge with Afeni was she has spoken at colleges, she had given speeches places and at organizations and done some television, but rarely did she speak about her own journey. That was the challenge. There was,
Yeah.
because she was always putting him first, um, and especially when he passed, obviously. So there was, we had to really dig to find her speaking anything about her own journey, which was unfortunate, but I think we found enough. So she was out there speaking, not a lot, but enough to have it in her own voice, excuse me, and her be our humble narrator of sorts, you know.
Uh-huh. Absolutely. It was so compelling. I really enjoyed that. Through this process of making the documentary about Tupac, what did you learn about him? Because obviously, you know, this is like a study guide, right? This is like learning, it's like Tupac 101, a college course, and learning about his life through this docu-series and creating it as the director. What did you learn about him, and what still resonates with you to this day?
Countless things I learned about him. So, like, where did we begin? One, but I think the biggest one that jumped out to me was, I thought I knew why he was paranoid. I thought it was a young black male, hip hop, Hennessy, weed, and little did I know what he was born into, and how the FBI and the counterintelligence program was trying to kill his family or imprison his family. And there were times when he was a 5, 8-year-old boy where his mother and her Black Panther comrades and family would have Tupac sit on a stoop in Harlem to watch out for federal agents as a boy. And when he blew his assignment, how he was punished if he blew that assignment. I'm like, I don't know any kids that have to sit out and stoop at 5 years old and look for federal agents. That's real paranoia. That's not even paranoia. Like, that's really happening to your family. One. Two, I didn't realize the abject poverty he experienced throughout his life, all the way to probably shortly before he, not even probably, for sure, shortly before he signed with Digital Underground, he was homeless, you know, and
Mm.
they didn't know where their next meal was coming from a lot of times. How that affects your psyche, um, I didn't know that about Tupac, you know. So there's all these things, being born into that struggle, being born into the FBI, like killing and decimating your family, um, constant poverty because your mother can't hold a job because they're always dogging her out, the feds. All that I didn't know. I didn't know that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about the police brutality aspect as well, that him, you know, getting beat up by the police while he was jaywalking, just walking over to the ATM to get some money. I didn't even know about that story, and
Yeah,
how that PTSD still stuck with him even years after, while he was successful and earning money as a hip hop artist, how that still stuck with him.
yep,
So that was really gut wrenching,
yeah,
that part of the
yep.
story.
And it,
Yeah.
to your point, that wasn't widely known. That where he was beat down and rendered unconscious, all that was, it wasn't well known, you know.
Yeah. And then the alopecia story too. I didn't know about that. And that's
Yeah.
why he was bald through most of his career, the latter part of his career, I should say.
Yes, yes,
Yeah. So you managed to bring a lot of hip hop artists to speak in this docu-series. We see Dr. Dre, we see Snoop in this, we see Eminem. So how did you bring those guys? And then we see some other folks like Mike Tyson, which Mike Tyson has some ties to Tupac. So how did you bring those folks to come in and speak on this docu-series?
I mean, most of them, it was easy because if they were part of the journey of his career or life, you know, you have Money B from Digital Underground as well, and
Yeah.
Shock G wasn't here, but thank God we got an interview, a great interview from Shock G. So, you know, the only a standout from that was Eminem, but Eminem worked with Afeni on a posthumous album and had a real deep connection with her. And I believe Tupac is Eminem's favorite rapper of all time. So that
Wow.
it was like what works in the journey. Clearly, Dr. Dre produced California Love and some of the All Eyes on Me albums while he was exiting Death Row. So like that was a pretty simple equation. Like who is a fresh voice? Snoop is always a fresh voice, even though he's ubiquitous. So his insights are always fresh. So that was an easy part for me to go, okay, who can speak to this and that we haven't seen a gazillion times, that's going to add insight to this in context, you know.
I feel like Snoop is the de facto commentator on a lot of documentaries because I saw him on the Dionne Warwick documentary that had come out a year or so ago. I was like, okay, Snoop
Yeah.
Dogg is commenting on Dionne Warwick's life. That's different.
That's funny. He's always got something interesting to say. Snoop has become quite the sage, you know.
Yeah, he has. He has indeed. So this year, hip hop turns 50. And if Tupac was still with us, how do you think Tupac would be celebrating hip hop today?
Tupac, damn, that's a good question. If he were still around today, I think he would be organizing the community and organizing in the community something special on this anniversary that was meaningful to the community, because that's really what he is. What he comes from, community organizing, and he's a social justice warrior, but he cared about the kids. So I'm sure he would be all about education on this 50th anniversary. How do we get this to the schools? How do we get this into Black colleges? I think that's probably what he'd be focused on and how he'd be celebrating.
Absolutely. I agree. I agree. You have this docuseries, and your brother Albert, he has a new series about John Wick, The Continental, that's coming out on Peacock. Both of you are working on TV projects. Will you reunite rather together on another film soon? Because I'm a big fan. Like, one of my favorite films of all time is Dead Presidents.
Oh
So yeah, what's going on with that?
no, it's gonna stay solo because I don't think. Well, I know you. It's virtually impossible to have two directors. It's very difficult. You know, it should be a singular vision. And when I look at the work that Albert's been doing this last 5 years, a lot. You know, I really believe it's better than the stuff we did. I know starting with the Defiant ones, the work I've been doing, I feel it was better than the stuff. Like the storytelling and the technique and whatever doesn't mean that I don't appreciate the stuff we did. It just it's it's a singular voice that needs to be guiding the ship. So I'm looking forward to my next feature film, a biopic on Snoop Dogg, and
Okay.
Universal Pictures. And you know, he's just finishing this. I know he's got a lot of exciting things, but we've been feeling healthier and happier doing solo projects than we ever did doing them together. Because you know, brothers, when you work with your family,
Brothers fight.
especially twins, especially twins.
See, I would think it'd be the opposite because twins tend to finish each other's sentences and you're more like symbiotic. So I
You
would
know what
feel
it is?
like
Me and Albert were both so bullheaded, like we want our way. Usually there's like in siblings, there's like you respect the older one, and there's that dynamic. Me and my brother were just like, no, I want my way.
oh my goodness. So, you know, you put a little bit of yourself in this documentary. As a matter of fact, there's a moment where you step from behind the camera and get in front of the camera because there's the very controversial moment between you and Tupac where there was some antagonism. What compelled you to want to tell that part of the story with you and Tupac and the disagreement that ensued between the two of you?
Well, frankly, Jamie, I didn't want to do it. It was my producer and my partner, Nelson George, and my partner Lasse Yarbe, who also cut it. They were really like, you gotta like acknowledge this. You gotta go, well, I can acknowledge it, but I don't have to be in it. They were like, no, you have to be in it. I go, well, I don't want to be in it. And then along the way, I said, you know, and the network also was like, no, you should deal with this because it's kind of the thing that's going to come up, you know. But I decided the technique of it was what was important to me. I go, if it happens in the moment and it's natural, I'll deal with it. I didn't see that coming because not only Adrian Gregory was sitting there, his first official manager, Layla Steinberg, was sitting over there as well in the corner, his first real manager. And they were goosing that situation. And what you saw was what really happened in the moment. And the reason why I agreed to having the film is because, you know, I was clearly uncomfortable and I was laughing, trying to play, you know, trying to, you know, make it a joke, but it clearly wasn't a joke. And and I was fine that you could see my discomfort with it because I wanted people to see that, you know, this is not easy for me, and I'm a little reluctant, but it was cool because the room I was in was conducive to talking about it, and I knew those people along the journey. So at the end of the day, when they cut the piece, I kind of stayed out of it because I'm usually got my hands heavy in the edit. I recused myself from that part, and it was fine. I thought it was fine.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to Black Girl Nerds. This docu-series is absolutely incredible. I learned so much more about Tupac that I thought I knew everything. Apparently I didn't. But also to bring information to a younger generation of hip hop fans to learn about Tupac, and then the mama component. So thank you so much for sharing this with the world, and I wish you all the best, and look forward to seeing more from you in the future.
Thank you, Jamie. Thank you for your time. Have a good weekend.
You too. Take care.
Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds. Better shake your booties for Black Girl Nerds.